Right now on the National Weather Desk, still growing. The Park Fire is now one of the largest wildfires in California history. Many people have lost everything.
We're all still here. We're going to come back together. We're going to rebuild.
Rising water from North Carolina to Vermont, floods take a toll on several communities.
The water was coming through the garage.
Tracking the tropics is another hurricane ready to form in the Atlantic. The heat is on. Olympic athletes face intense heat in Paris. What's changed since the city last hosted the games?
Temperatures have warmed up about 5.5 degrees.
And why tonight could be a great opportunity to see the aurora borealis.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Jordan Evans. California's Park Fire is still growing. It's now the 5th largest in the state's history. More than 5,500 firefighters are working to put out the flames, which as of last night was just 18% contained. It's burned more than 600 square miles, including 200 buildings. Many of those buildings were homes that are now nothing but ash and debris. Muna Sadiq met up with a musician who lost everything, but is already planning to rebuild.
Me and my son were in a very, very heated game of Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Switch. Like, it's really good that they have those alerts on the phones.
A Paradise native who witnessed the devastation of the campfire.
Every home that I grew up in as a child does not exist anymore.
He knew it was time to go.
We walked out of the front door and it was just a huge cloud of smoke coming over directly over the top of our house.
Taking only the necessities.
So I just grabbed what few things I could, the important things like the Nintendo Switch.
He watched on his phone as the fire inched towards his home, eventually destroying it, along with 2 vehicles, including his dad's Jeep. His in-home recording studio also gone.
I had a really awesome vocal booth with sound treatment, hundreds of dollars worth of these little red and black squares. It sounded amazing in there. It is just stuff, you know what I mean? And there's lots of worse things happening to people in the world right now. All my friends, we may have all lost our houses, but we're all still here. We're going to come back together. We're going to rebuild. That's how you really defeat a challenge like this, is overcoming it and then having like the best time of your life.
Also in California, the Boral Fire has burned more than 57,000 acres, wreaking havoc in the Sequoia National Forest. The fire already destroyed the historic mining town of Havila in the Kern River Valley. As Will Silverstein reports, firefighters are working hard to get the flames under control.
Havila was birthed as a pioneer settlement during the tail end of the American Civil War. Now it's scorched earth, giving way to the flames of the Boral Fire. While Bakersfield is the first city to come to mind when people mention Kern County, up until 1874, Havila was actually the county seat for Kern. During our time in Bodfish today, we caught up with one of the descendants from the first pioneers in Havila.
When I was a kid, I was living in L.A. I'd come up here and I thought I was in heaven.
Joe Adkins can trace his Havila roots back decades. Adkins telling Eyewitness News his grandfather was a gold miner and a trapper during the foundations of the little mining community.
It's really sad. I mean, there are a lot of old memories up in there. When I went to school here at Kern Valley High, there was a lot of my friends that lived up there, and we'd go up there and just, it was a kid's heaven.
But Adkins' current home, one his wife's family has had for around 60 years, is at risk of perishing in the blaze.
The way the winds are, it could be devastating to us here.
Tracking the tropics this morning, and we are keeping a close eye on a disturbance that is now approaching the Leeward Islands in the Caribbean Sea. As that wave moves west, it could form into the next tropical system over the next week. West Palm Beach meteorologist Jennifer Collins has more.
Now, this area hasn't developed yet. It's been influenced by very dry air. So odds of development are low over the next 2 days. But by the time it heads towards the Bahamas, this is where it has a medium chance of development. And we could see a tropical depression form later on this week. However, there is still high uncertainty with this system. A lot of global models haven't really come into agreement with this general area as we head towards the weekend. Now, if the system forms late, it would take a more southern track towards the northern Greater Antilles and the Florida Straits. degrees. This would mean a weaker system and could even enter the Gulf of Mexico by that point, but really will surge in abundant tropical moisture across the state of Florida and increase rain chances. Now, if the system forms over the Bahamas and forms a bit earlier, it could take a track closer to the east coast of Florida and bring more rain and the potential for hazardous surf along the east coast. Now, if this system forms early, it would be a bit stronger, and we could see hazardous marine conditions for the eastern coast of Florida and even potentially more impacts for the Carolinas along the mid-Atlantic, too. If that system forms early, it would take a more east track.
We'll be watching the models closely. There's also a widespread risk of severe storms today across the northern plains and the Midwest. The enhanced risk, a 3 out of 5, includes Omaha and Des Moines, Iowa. But cities like Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and Louisville, Kentucky could also see severe wind gusts and some large hail. Just to the south, a high-pressure heat dome continues to bake the southern plains. 96 million Americans are under a heat alert today. Excessive heat warnings, the highest on the scale, are up from Missouri to Mississippi, including Kansas City, St. Louis, Memphis, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Flash flooding Tuesday in northern Vermont destroyed homes and caused widespread damage. Emergency management officials say swift water rescue teams conducted at least 24 rescues from flooded areas. Now residents are working on cleanup that could take months. Sid Belway has more.
The town of St. Johnsbury woke up to major flash flood damages Tuesday morning.
We're looking for whatever help we can get. We've got a good control over things. We've got good crews between our fire, police, dispatch, and our public works crews. But it's a little tiring, but we're confident that we can handle whatever comes at us. So.
The intersection of Concord and Gilman Avenue completely washed away. Neighbors say it's the worst they've seen, even with recent rounds of rain.
A couple weeks ago, it weren't nothing compared to this. This is 10 times worse. It was bad seeing the road washed out, but this is bad.
Over on Farmer Drive, the neighborhood was essentially cut in half thanks to washouts.
I got up to just check on things, and I came out, and the water was coming through the garage. This was all washed out, and it was flowing into our basement. It was nonstop rain for 3-4 hours.
Emergency resources became casualties of the floodwaters themselves.
One of our shelter locations was flooded, the town school, which is typically where we would go set up an overnight shelters.
This was a scene in western North Carolina yesterday as heavy rain brought intense flooding. Meteorologist Ryan Coulter posted this video from a view on his Facebook page. Many roads were shut down as of this morning. 1,000 customers are still without power. People are also cleaning up in southwest Ohio. A tornado swept through the area early Tuesday morning. Chelsea Six spent Tuesday talking to residents impacted by the storm.
You alert your neighbors and look out for each other.
Blanchester's first tornado warning was issued just before 2 o'clock Tuesday morning. Yards are now littered with tree debris, metal poles bent, roofs damaged. Couple Jim and Michelle Miz says they heard this tree fall on their neighbor's home.
It's scary when you don't have a basement. When you got a typical ranch with a crawl space, you just have to do what they say even on the news is get to the center of the house and find 4 walls between you and do a little prayer.
Jim and Rhonda Fugit woke up to the storm hitting their home on Dudley Road. By afternoon, their community is helping them with tree cleanup.
It's nice when people just voluntarily stop to see if they could get us anything or help with cleanup, and gotten a lot of people to help us.
Did you see the northern lights last night? A geomagnetic storm earlier this week increased chances of the aurora being visible farther south than normal. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center says the lights could be visible through Thursday in many northern states. That's where we're going to take a look to check out the weather in some northern cities that will allow you a chance to see those northern lights. And we start in Frankfort, Michigan, north of Kalamazoo. Tonight will be mainly clear, but unfortunately there could be a stray shower or storm. The daytime forecast high is 81 degrees. Oswego, New York is along Lake Ontario, north of Syracuse. It will be mostly cloudy today with partly cloudy conditions overnight. Today's forecast high is at 79 degrees. And finally, we head west to Richland in southeastern Washington state, where viewing should be perfect tonight. It would be in the mid-90s during the day, but after sunset, mercury drops to the 60s with clear skies. Love that low humidity. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, it's been 100 years since Paris last hosted the Olympic Games. We'll look at how the weather has changed in the city over the years, and we'll help you understand heat lightning.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. We have more rain on the way in the Northeast today in the form of showers and thunderstorms. Areas that don't need any more rain have another flood watch in effect. Areas in Vermont that had all the flooding yesterday, you have another flood watch that goes into effect today. Here come some of those showers, some downpours. That's about lunchtime. You're already clearing it out in western New York and through northern parts of New Jersey as well. The back edge of any rain in New England moves out tonight. There's the chance for a shower tomorrow, but most areas will see sun and building heat.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Wednesday starts out similarly to your Tuesday, but it's going to mean likely some drier conditions for a change here. We're not going to see a whole lot of activity for your late afternoon like we saw on Tuesday, but temperatures are going to be on the rise. Small chances of rain each day all the way into your Friday, but the temperatures are going to start to soar low to mid 90s late Wednesday afternoon. Thursday likely going to see some low to mid 90s.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Here's a look at your highs this afternoon. Most of us will be in the 90s. Some of us flirting with record highs up in Arkansas and Mississippi, mid and upper 90s. Then we'll be in the 90s in Florida. Asheville is our cool spot, as always, at 88 degrees. Spotty showers expected throughout the day for most areas that typically expect spotty afternoon showers. So think South Mississippi, South Alabama, South Georgia, and all of the Florida Peninsula expecting some sea breeze showers. And then we clear up overnight for your Thursday.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Olympic athletes and fans are facing extreme heat in Paris, where the mercury has hit 97 degrees yesterday. It's been 100 years since Paris last hosted the Summer Olympics, and climate change has taken a toll on the French capital. Meteorologist Violet Skybor explains.
Just looking back at the past 100 years in Paris since the last time they hosted the Olympics back in 1924, on average, temperatures have warmed up about 5.5 degrees. Looking at just the daily high temperatures, in just the past decade, they've seen 188 days with highs at 86 degrees or warmer. Looking at the decade following the last time they had the Olympics, 1924 to 1933, they only had 69 days with highs of 86 or greater. The overnights are even more impressive, how warm it's been in recent years. The past decade, they've seen 84 nights with the warmest low temperature being 68 degrees or higher. Looking at the decade, the last time they had the Olympics, 1924 to 1933, they only had 4 nights. So it has been quite warm during the day and at night in Paris. And this has a big impact on the athletes and how they perform. Heat illness is definitely a concern. They haven't postponed or canceled any events due to the heat, but they, of course, are doing precautions to keep the athletes safe. Heat illness, though, can occur depending on the frequency and intensity of play, the time of day, duration of exposure, and also the opportunity to recover. They need a lot of breaks out of the sun in a cool, shaded area. And the chance for heat is going to continue for the Summer Olympics just in general because of climate change. The Climate Shift Index basically shows how likely it is to see above average temperatures. So the heat is going to be sticking around as global warming continues to have an impact.
When dealing with extreme temperatures, you need to be aware of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, as we just heard. Let's take a look at a recent TikTok post from meteorologist Cheriston Clark explaining the difference between the two.
Let's talk about heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. So we're going to start off with, these are both heat-related illnesses. Heat exhaustion happens when your body just can't cool itself through sweating. And then heat stroke, your body temperature climbs too quickly. And oftentimes when you're suffering from a heat stroke, you'll stop sweating. So with heat exhaustion, you'll start to feel a little dizzy. You'll get some headaches. You'll start to feel a little nauseous, maybe even start to vomit. You'll also experience weakness and fatigue, muscle cramps, and you'll start to breathe rapidly. With heat stroke, you'll also experience that dizziness, but you're also going to be left in an altered mental state. You're going to be left confused. Maybe you'll lose consciousness and you won't have the ability to sweat. If you or somebody you know is suffering from these symptoms, get them or yourself to a cooler or air-conditioned spot. Also make sure that you or that person is drinking water if they're conscious or if you're conscious. And if you have access to a cold compress or even just a rag, a towel, get it cold, and just put it over you to help cool your body down. And if somebody's having a heat stroke, that can turn deadly very quickly. So it's important to act fast and call 911 immediately.
Have you ever heard of heat lightning? Would you be surprised to learn that it does not exist? Meteorologist Jenna Warner explains.
Well, in the summertime, often you see lightning like this occurring along the horizon line, especially at night. Some people call this heat lightning or dry lightning. The only thing is, heat lightning is actually a myth. What you're really seeing is a thunderstorm really far away, usually a strong thunderstorm that goes higher up into the atmosphere. You can't see the lightning that it is producing, usually because of trees or hills or buildings in the way and even the curvature of the earth. But since that storm goes so high up into the atmosphere, you can see those flashes in the cloud, and you can actually see those flashes up to 100 miles away, which is what happened in this radar example some time ago. So there was a hefty thunderstorm near Clinton, North Carolina, about 100 miles away from the PD in Grand Strand that was producing a lot of lightning, and we could see those kinds of flashes, especially if you looked north from our area. The only thing is we were totally safe from any lightning risk. So we often say when thunder roars, you should head indoors, but when you hear thunder itself, that means that lightning is within maybe 10 miles of a radius from where you are. But if you see lightning and you don't hear thunder and it is a storm really far away, there is no risk of any lightning impacting your safety.
Thanks, Jenna. Now to northern Michigan, where a new system is being used to track sturgeon spawning in local rivers. Audrey Bouchier has that story.
Roughly 7 feet down is the passive integrated transponder array that was installed just last week.
And so what that'll do is as our fish that are tagged swim over the top of it, it will energize that tag and tell us that a fish passed by this array that we put in.
This system helps monitor the success rate of the sturgeon traveling back up the river each spring to spawn. Jerome says it's important that these fish keep coming back.
We're trying to rehabilitate the population, kind of increase their numbers.
The pit tag array allows Jerome to monitor the fish remotely instead of using field workers. Adjacent to the Rainbow Bend, the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians also has a streamside rearing facility where 788 baby sturgeon are awaiting to be tagged and released in the next few months. Before being released, the sturgeon must grow 6 to 8 inches long. Roughly a week before release, these baby sturgeon will get tagged on the top side of their skin, which helps Jerome and his team track the fish.
Every time that fish is handled in the future, we get a unique number back and we can see when that fish was handled or if it was one of our released fish. One of the large goals of our management plan is kind of looking at the recruitment and success of the program. And so it's nice having it in place and can then now monitor for these returning streamside fish.
West Nile virus cases are popping up in Texas, and public health experts say people need to be aware of the number of mosquitoes in their area. Adela Uchida has more.
The mosquito traps that produce the two newest positive tests for West Nile virus in Williamson County are located near Geneva and Edwards Parks in Georgetown.
We've actually had a total of 5 that have shown up this week, with those being in Georgetown, Leander, and Liberty Hill.
Jason Fritz is the Integrated Vector Management Program Lead at the Williamson County and Cities Health District.
When you see the virus show up in a mosquito, that could be an increased risk and a warning for potential human infections.
5 positive tests might not seem like much, but...
Well, it's still pretty early because usually it starts to peak around August, even into September. So the fact that we're seeing an increase in West Nile virus cases gives me some pause for concerns.
So far, there are 9 confirmed human cases in the state of Texas. Most people who get West Nile might not even realize it. Dr. Peter Hotez is a professor of pediatrics and molecular virology at the Baylor College of Medicine.
The problem is about 1 in 100, 1 in 150 cases can become quite severe, and that can lead to what's called neuroinvasive disease, where the virus is entering the central nervous system.
As we take a short break, we soar over Pennsylvania's Bedford Buffalo Ranch.
Well, a very good Wednesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. It's still going to remain hot and muggy for most of the Midwest. How about 102 in Wichita today? 98 there in St. Louis. Factor in the humidity, it's going to feel close to 110 or hotter. And we got a few of those pop-up showers and storms across a lot of the Midwest for the day today. That kind of shifts its way into a lot of Wisconsin and Illinois and Indiana for the day tomorrow, with still some 90s and triple digits on the map for your Thursday. How about Friday? Still moves a little bit more east.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Things are a little cool out here from Shreveport back up to San Antonio as the temperatures kind of drop back off a little bit. Warm everywhere else, particularly El Paso at about 83. Got a little system developing out west. It'll fire up a little rain maybe up into North Texas out toward El Paso. Might be a stray shower along the Gulf Coast, but that's pretty much it. Otherwise, it's going to be summer levels again all across the region. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. Temperatures are beginning to rebound. After a cool down, they're starting to build up back to triple-digit heat from Nevada all the way into Arizona and New Mexico. High pressure's getting stronger, sending up this heat wave, and we're going to have it move into the Pacific Northwest, where we have air quality alerts in place for wildfire smoke. That's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
When severe weather hits, it's important to be prepared. For farm owners, that can mean a lot of work. Meteorologist Ed Russo looks at what it takes to make sure farmers and their animals are ready for severe weather.
Compared to a normal residential property, which is about 0.2 of an acre, farms are much bigger, on the order of 450 acres. That's about 350 football fields. That's far more property to protect if you have severe weather approaching, which can include straight-line winds, hail, tornadoes, and flooding. Taking action to protect livestock is something that needs to be done beforehand. Have a sturdy shelter in place for your animals that will shield them from heavy rain, hail, and high winds. Make sure they have access to extra feed and water. And finally, make sure your animals are tagged properly in the event they escape after bad weather moves through. While preparing for severe weather on a farm may require more planning, Having that plan in place long before severe weather strikes will ensure the safety of you, your family, and your animals.
We'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on all of your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. I'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm meteorologist Jordan Evans. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.